So yeah, I started Good Soul Investment Management with the idea to do something good with it, where I'm kind of we changed our fee structure so that half of the fees net of expenses goes to charity. So we have the similar fee structures of every other hedge fund, 2 and 20, it's called 2% management fee and 20% performance fee. But half of that after expenses go to charity.
Wow.
And it's written into our prospectus, it's like a law of the fund, And so our dream is to be successful enough where it inspires maybe more hedge fund managers to start something similar, where ESG has become a huge investing theme over the last 10 years. Yeah. Maybe giving back and altruistic capitalism can become a big theme, because I think ultimately capitalism needs to evolve, and socialism is not the right way. And I think I'm afraid we're heading that direction. Yeah. Especially amongst younger voters coming to age, being sucked into some of those ideologies. And so maybe if they can see capitalism as being more giving back and not so greedy, then maybe we can prevent the kind of too much of a radical change to socialism. That's my higher goal. That's what keeps me going every day.
That's amazing, man. I'm so happy you exist. That's so good.
I mean, there's other people trying to do another similar altruistic capitalism things. Yeah. Like my partner and I were just talking about. Have you heard of the Bitcoin or crypto exchange FTX?
I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it. Yeah,
it's like Coinbase, but FTX is, I think, even more dominant internationally than Coinbase. Coinbase is like the U.S. central Bitcoin, but FTX, letters FTX. This guy, Sam Bankman-Friedman, is like a genius. He's like one of those like generational founders in finance or something. Like if you listen to his interviews, he's just like super smart, knows what he's talking about. But he's really got a huge altruistic capitalism component to his business, which is fascinating. So I think if you get more people that become really successful, putting this in as part of their business, then hopefully that can help evolve capitalism so that, the most successful in capitalism can do more than just pay taxes. We can actually imprint giving back as part of our success in a kind of more significant way.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So I 100% agree with you, and that's one thing that I think with more people having like technology, the internet and stuff like that has enabled people like yourself and Dave with his Afghanistan food relief fund that he raised, $450,000. Like that's another example where I'm like, oh my God, like people that have a little bit of influence and also capital to build something where they can help other people willingly seems to have become a little bit more of a trend, at least as of late. But I'm curious, do you think we have everything that we need from a society perspective to move capitalism towards that goal, or do you think other things have to happen? Because I shared that with you a lot. I really hope that's where we're going with capitalism. But do you feel like there are missing variables in society for us to get there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the missing variables is a lack of trust or skepticism with people that are in a position to give money, in that, you don't want to just, if you're giving away your money that you worked to earn, you don't necessarily want to just give it to anyone who's going to knock at your door asking for money, like any charity, because there's some of them, I don't know, but a proportion of them are kind of not scams, but just like they maybe use most of the funds to further their own personal, lifestyle, and only a small percentage of it goes to the actual cause, for example. So I think there's some of that. And I think there's the perception of that, at least, that hurts. I think if we can get over that hump and figure out better ways to give that people trust, I would think that there should be, more capital freed up to be given. Yeah. But I think that some of the traps there are, like, we set up a foundation ourselves as part of the fund. And before even I set up the fund, a little foundation that we're using as a vehicle to give money from. But I think, really wealthy folks that set up these foundations, the foundations can quickly become their own kind of bureaucratic trap, where it's like, you have a team of people running the foundation, or an organization, like whether it's a Bill Gates Foundation or whatever it is. Like, some of these foundations can have so much capital, but they're so like big and clunky, they can't act quickly, unlike the Afghanistan food thing. Like the foundation set up, it's just, they can't just give, they have all these guidelines and check boxes to check before they can give money to something. And somehow that just is, I think, causing a lot of friction. So if we can somehow eliminate some of that friction, and so, I mean, it's there for a good reason, right? You don't want to just give money to any so-called foundation, right? You need to find some way to cut through that friction so that money can be moved quickly to the actual needy folks. Yeah.
That's a great point. And like, so when you say trust, and that makes a lot of sense to me, that the one fear I have, or maybe it's like the point of inflection, but trust seems like at an all-time low in society. Like, especially with the stuff that's happening with news media, whatever mainstream media. It's like, and the thing that really blew my mind is like, once I really got familiar with Tesla and I started following Tesla in the mainstream media, I'm like, nobody really knows what the hell they're talking about. Like, what else do they not know what they're talking about? Right. So like that trust factor, and I don't know if it's me getting older and getting more familiar with that stuff, or it's a point of like an all-time low when it comes to our society. And do we need to reach that point for it to sort of reverse and go towards that future that you just described, right? I agree with you 100%. It's such a weird time that we're in. So
it is weird. Yeah. Like one thing I just discovered recently about giving is there was a guy who I can't remember his name, he gave a TED talk, well-known guy. He set up like some big breast cancer awareness foundation, I believe, that ended up bringing in like hundreds of millions of dollars, some astronomical amount, right? But he gave the story about how initially it was he had like a $50,000 amount grant to like, and he could have given the whole $50,000 to the breast cancer, but instead he allocated like 30,000 or 60% to marketing the effort, and so that's seen as like overhead, but the overhead marketing ultimately led to the pie growing much and much bigger, to where he had like $100 million, and even if like $30 million of it was for marketing, at least there was now $70 million to be given. So it wasn't, it was an interesting case he made that sometimes, for example, we look at overhead of a foundation. We're like, oh, don't give that. There's too much overhead that's going to the people's lifestyles or whatever. But sometimes overhead can be used to just grow the pie bigger for that effort, and it was just open my eyes up, like to look at like foundations and charities that, I think most people kind of have certain ideas where like, oh, if there's too much overhead in that foundation, automatically to me means that they're not efficient use of capital. I don't want to give to that,
Yeah, but the interesting point there is like, I tend to think, so Pareto rule, so 80-20, like maybe 20% of those funds that have high overhead actually are growing that pie, whereas 80% are not, right? So
yeah, it's true.
That's that's very interesting.